What now, Scowly?
I started this gangster shit. Mr. Motherfucker, thanks I get. Hello. I started this gangster shit. And it's the motherfucker, thanks I get. Hello.
Hey, if you're new to this channel and enjoying the content, would you take a minute to subscribe, please? Thanks very much. Good morning, it's Comic Artist Pro Secrets. You are listening to Ethan Van Sciver, 25-year veteran of the comic book industry. Great big Star Wars fan. Why not? Another Captain Marvel article. Getting everybody revved up for the Captain Marvel movie. Captain Marvel. By the way, can I just verge into an aside here for a minute? Now, I'm not an SJW, but let me be an SJW for one minute, okay? Time me. Monica Rambeau was the Captain Marvel that I grew up with in the 1980s. She was a African-American woman of color, WOC, woman of color, okay? Now, she was in Secret Wars. She wore a silvery white, awesome costume with black accents. She had energy powers just like Captain Marvel Brie Larson does here. Captain Marvel White Bread. Now, why have they taken this woman? Why have they stripped Monica Rambeau, this valuable character who could actually empower so many women of color? Why have they taken that character and stripped her from pop culture history and replaced her with Captain Desperate Housewife here? Why? Why has that happened? Any answers? I can't think of any answers myself. I find it perplexing. Look at this woman scowling from her privilege as she takes a job from a woman of color. Think on that for a minute. Now, SJW off, but, I do miss Monica Rambeau. The whole thing is very, very strange that they're going to stand here and claim that this is an empowering kind of feminist movie, while they have removed the real Captain Marvel, the real Captain Marvel from the 1980s from the roster. Interesting. Captain Marvel can lift Thor's hammer, according to Brie Larson. So Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, gives its holder awesome power, but not just anyone can pick it up. The inscription on the side of the hammer reads, "Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor." So those words are ironclad. No woman could pick up the hammer of Thor. No woman could pick up Mjolnir at all. Of course not. Anyone else who tries to lift it, this hammer will not even budge. Okay, and so now, having said that, even though Thor has most often wielded Mjolnir, all right, there have been times when other individuals have been able to pick up Mjolnir and carry it, and a few times where it's been in alternate realities, and then one obviously egregious error that happened, in the past few years because of SJW Marvel. And we'll talk about all those. We'll go through these. But the big question here is, does Brie Larson know what she's talking about, or is she talking out of her ass? I mean, it's quite possible that this Captain Marvel character, according to the MCU, will be able to lift Thor's hammer, and should Thor's hammer materialize, she will be able to hold it, and that's going to be a scene in the movie. She may have spoiled something, or she may be talking out of her patootie, as they said in the 1940s. She may be talking out of her rump. What is the answer here? Hey, Brie Larson, could Captain Marvel blow up the Death Star? Yeah. Brie Larson, could Captain Marvel beat Doomsday? Oh, with one hand tied behind her back. Oh, okay. Hey, could Captain Marvel rise from the grave after 3 days? No, make it 2. Make it 2. So anything that any male hero can do, of course, Captain Marvel, according to Brie Larson, can do better. Is that what's going on here, or is there actual fact behind this? Let's forge ahead, shall we? The Marvel Cinematic Universe may have another who is worthy of wielding Thor's hammer. While Mjolnir was destroyed by Hela in Thor Ragnarok, the subject of who may or may not be capable of even picking up the hammer, let alone using it, has been subject to quite a bit of debate. But according to Brie Larson, Captain Marvel is perfectly capable of picking up the mighty Mjolnir given the opportunity. Marvel fans know how the old adage goes: whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. That's the inscription on the hammer, okay? That needs to be amended to say if they be worthy. Not necessarily, no. Not necessarily. Respect my pronouns. I just ask that you respect my pronouns. Since Jane Foster also became the female version of Thor in the comics. That is correct. That is the egregious thing that I speak of. But the point being that if someone can pick up the hammer, they're going to have godlike powers. Captain Marvel has yet to be released, but from what we've seen in the trailers alone, it's clear that Brie Larson is going to be incredibly strong as Carol Danvers. During a recent interview, Larson was asked point blank whether or not the character could lift Thor's hammer. She didn't hesitate in the answer. Oh, definitely, yes. Oh, yeah, nerd. Yeah, you better. Whatever, nerd. Of course she could. Now, here's the thing. Here's the other thing to realize. SJW tropes when it comes to comic book characters and any heroes whatsoever. SJWs are incapable of creating heroes with actual flaws. They cannot create three-dimensional characters. In every arena in which they squat, SJWs create characters that are blandly super powerful. They offer superheroes to the reading public as though they're parents, disinterested parents that are trying to impress their 5-year-olds. Oh yeah, this toy that I'm about to give you, this is the greatest toy. Blah blah blah. This toy's way better than any of the other toys. This is all. Basically, they present characters like Captain Marvel in ways that they're completely unbeatable, unbelievably overpowered, super powerful, flawless, totally awesome, badass. They use the phrase badass a lot. Badass. And by the way, Brie Larson has a flat ass. She is a flat ass superhero. And that's supposed to be good. They think that's a good thing. The fact that the Brie Larson as Captain Marvel can lift Thor's hammer is meant to elevate Brie Larson rather than decrease and defame Thor, which is the bigger issue here. Now, when you're creating characters, you want to kind of, and when you're working with these superheroes, you want to respect each and every one and let them stand on their own and be defined by their own strengths and weaknesses. You do weaken Thor when you let Captain Marvel be eligible to carry his exclusive hammer. Having said that, his hammer isn't that exclusive. I'm going to go through a list of other heroes from Marvel's past, from their sometimes glorious, other times murky past, other characters who have held Mjolnir, and then you can make up your mind for yourself. Let's read the rest of this article. Unfortunately, unless Mjolnir can be resurrected somehow, and this doesn't seem impossible, we're probably not going to see this happen. But just hearing the level of confidence when it comes to such a monumental task is impressive, or it's stupid. It's one of the two. It's either impressive or it's dumb. She's either awesome or a dum-dum. Which one? Especially when considering how many heroes that already exist in the MCU have tried and failed to pick up the powerful weapon in the past. As many will surely recall, this was a subject explored in great detail in Age of Ultron. During Tony's party, virtually everyone tried to lift it, and nobody succeeded, though Captain America did manage to move it just a little bit, leading to one of the best visual gags in the franchise to date. Later, once Vision was created, he was able to easily pick up Mjolnir. However, Vision does or did have the unfair advantage of possessing the Infinity Stone. Also, he's not alive, so that's another thing. I mean, he doesn't have human foibles. I mean, the awesome android was able to pick up Thor's hammer too, simply because he's not alive. He's not a living being. So I guess the same kind of moral rules that keep Mjolnir out of the hands of lesser beings doesn't really apply to androids and robots and things like that. The Mind Stone specifically, Captain Marvel on the other hand, isn't going to have such an advantage. Taking that into account, she'll be the first hero on her own capable of lifting the hammer should this wind up ever making it to the screen. Needless to say, Carol Danvers is not someone to be messed with. Yeah, alright. The post-credit scene in Infinity War revealed Nick Fury sending a distress signal to Captain Marvel. We're going to be introduced to her character first in the Captain Marvel solo movie, which arrives in theaters on March 8, 2019, and takes place in the 1990s. Then she's going to join our remaining heroes in the fight against Thanos and Avengers Endgame. Ooh, I can't wait. I can't wait. Which arrives less than 2 months later on April 26, 2019. The Mad Titan has better watch his back. Garbage tier. Feel free to check out the full interview with Brie Larson from the BuzzFeed Brazil YouTube channel below. No thank you. That's fine. So let's talk about characters who have been worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer. And there have been precious few. All right, to start with, there is the great Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill, created by Walt Simonson back in 1983 in Mighty Thor number 337. Perhaps the single most iconic example of another hero lifting Mjolnir came as writer-artist Walt Simonson began his now legendary run on the Mighty Thor. Simonson introduced Beta Ray Bill in his first issue. Bill was the chosen protector of his race, the Corbinites, and genetically modified to become their protector as they fled their galaxy's destruction. Bill and Thor initially came into conflict through a classic case of superhero misunderstanding. Thor was knocked unconscious during a fight and reverted to the form of Dr. Donald Blake, and when Bill picked up Blake's walking stick and struck it against the wall, he suddenly found himself wielding Mjolnir and the power of Thor. This alien defender proved himself worthy where countless others had failed, and by all rights, defeating Thor in battle and claiming his weapon made Bill the rightful owner of Mjolnir. But instead of keeping it, Odin had another enchanted hammer forged named Stormbreaker and gave it to Bill. Thor got Mjolnir back, plus he found himself a new friend and powerful ally. Now that's a great story of sharing and caring. Another example is Conan the Barbarian, back in 1983 with What If number 39. For as long as Marvel published Conan comics, it's surprising that we didn't see more crossovers between Robert E. Howard's heroes and the Marvel Universe. Why didn't we? But we did at least see a glimpse of the crossover opportunities with one issue of What If, this issue. In this hypothetical tale, Thor was transported back in time to the Hyborian Age. With no memory of his previous life, Thor fell in with Conan and began leading the bitchin' life of a thief, reaver, and slayer. Eventually, Conan's nemesis, Thoth Amon, caught wind of the amazing weapon in Thor's possession and tried his best to harness Mjolnir's might for himself. In the aftermath of the battle, Thoth Amon was burned to a crisp, and Thor lay dying of his wounds. He passed Mjolnir on to Conan, making it probably the one time in Conan's career he happily dabbled in magic. Unfortunately, while the ending of the issue implied Conan went on to enjoy his newfound godhood, we never actually see what a Mjolnir-wielding Cimmerian is capable of. This one requires a sequel. If any Avenger other than Thor is worthy of lifting Mjolnir, it has to be Captain America, which is why Steve Rogers has proven worthy of wielding the hammer on three separate occasions, despite what you saw in Avengers Age of Ultron. The first came in 1988 during a period where Steve had abandoned the mantle of Captain America and gone independent as the Captain. What a douchebag. This was seen in Mighty Thor number 390 in 1988. Alright? Cap paid a visit to his buddy Thor at Avengers Mansion, only for the team to be attacked by Grog and the Demons of Death. Typical. When Thor was subdued by the combined might of these villains, Cap was able to lift Mjolnir long enough to send it back to its rightful owner. Now, Cap had a chance to wield Mjolnir for a slightly longer stretch in the event Fear itself. With his trusty shield having been shattered by the Serpent, Cap had nothing but some automatic weapons to battle the Serpent's minions. Luckily for him, Thor lost his grip on Mjolnir during the battle with his uncle. Mjolnir crashed to Earth and Cap hoisted it high and led the charge. And then finally, during Secret Empire's Free Comic Book Day issue, when Hydra took over the United States, Thor was taken out, and an evil version of Steve Rogers lifted up Mjolnir. This was a jaw-dropping moment for fans who were sure there'd be no way Hydra Cap could lift the hammer. Garbage. Thor Odinson even pledged his loyalty to him because he trusted Mjolnir's judgment. But it turns out, Madam Hydra Eliza Sinclair used her power to change the wording on Mjolnir, allowing Evil Steve to temporarily cheat the hammer's rules. How dumb is this? I hate SJW Marvel. At the end of Secret Empire, the real Steve Rogers returned, lifted the hammer without cheating, and took down his doppelganger with a resounding Mjolnir uppercut, proving that he is the one true worthy Captain America, I guess. Alright. Here's another weird one. Thunderstrike. The 80s were weird. The late 80s and the early 90s. I don't know what was going on. Some very strange, sometimes cool, sometimes weird stuff was going on. In 1988, Mighty Thor 409, Dr. Donald Blake helped keep the Thunder God grounded, but Blake was eventually retired. Marvel eventually gave the concept of a god hiding within a mortal's body and this is an interesting experiment. They introduced a character named Eric Masterson. Okay, so he was just an ordinary construction worker. Masterson's bravery and selflessness, he's a lot like me, earned him Thor's respect. And when Masterson was injured in a battle between Thor and Mongoose, Odin chose to merge the two heroes in order to save Masterson's life. For a time, Eric Masterson became Thor's new civilian identity and the first human to wield Mjolnir on a regular basis. He quickly became known as the Everyman Avenger. Eventually, the two heroes were split again, but like he did for Beta Ray Bill, Odin saw that a new Mjolnir-like weapon called Thunderstrike was forged. He's handing out hammers. Where's mine? Masterson kept fighting the good fight until his death. Even now, his son Kevin carries on his legacy as the new Thunderstrike. And then there's Wonder Woman, as seen in Marvel vs. DC number 2 back in 1996. I remember this event. It was pure garbage. It was just fan wankery, as they say. But nevertheless, before JLA Avengers became a reality, the Marvel and DC universes crossed paths in Marvel vs. DC. This miniseries didn't have quite the same storytelling ambition. The focus was solely on showcasing the big battles between Marvel and DC's heroes that fans had always speculated about. The winners of the 5 main battles were even decided by fan votes. So this is a popularity contest. It was so stupid. I think Wolverine beat up Lobo. It was enough. Thor didn't. By the way, they were so ashamed. I remember this of like, how do we make Wolverine beat Lobo? They had it happen off panel. They couldn't show it. They couldn't bring themselves to show it. It was just like happened off panel. Wolverine comes out. Like, that was easy. Nice. Thor didn't actually battle Wonder Woman in this series, appropriate as that matchup would have been. But when Thor lost control of Mjolnir after his clash with the real Captain Marvel, Shazam, the hammer found its way to Diana. She was able to lift it easily, augmenting her own godly powers with that of Thor's. But when it came time to do battle with Marvel's Thunder Goddess, Storm, Wonder Woman chose to discard the hammer rather than fight with an unfair advantage. That makes sense. She probably regretted that decision a few seconds later when Storm zapped her into submission. Had the fan voting gotten another way, who knows how this fight might have ended up. Yeah, it was dumb. Storm could not beat Wonder Woman. I'm fairly sure, but that's how this event went. It ended up being a popularity contest. Alright, one assumes Superman could also wield Mjolnir. And it happened in JLA Avengers number 4 with this incredible cover image. JLA Avengers number 4, battered Superman wielding both Mjolnir and Captain America's shield. Everyone loved it. Superman is certainly honorable enough to wield Mjolnir, but he doesn't exactly have the heart of a warrior. So in ordinary circumstances, Superman would be unable to lift the hammer, but luckily Odin's enchantment isn't a permanent thing. Superman found that out as he led the Avengers and the Justice League in a losing battle against the nigh omnipotent Krona. He was able to lift Mjolnir and deal a single crippling blow to the villain's machine. In the aftermath of the battle, Superman found himself unable to lift the hammer. Thor revealed to his new friend that Odin had lifted the enchantment temporarily, sensing that the hammer was in good hands with the Man of Steel. Awesome Andy. Okay? Basically the awesome android from the Fantastic Four, as seen in She-Hulk Volume 2, number 14, back in 2006. Mjolnir's enchantment is designed to prevent any living being from lifting the hammer unless they're worthy, but as it turns out, the living being part can serve as a convenient loophole in the right circumstances. Awesome Andy began life as the Awesome Android, a robotic enforcer built by the Mad Thinker and capable of mimicking all sorts of superhuman powers. The Awesome Android was traditionally portrayed as a brainless construct, but when Dan Slott kicked off his She-Hulk run, he revamped the character into a bumbling but well-meaning legal assistant in the offices of Goodman, Lieber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway. The source of this transformation from Awesome Android to Awesome Andy was eventually revealed in a flashback issue. It turned out that the Mad Thinker upgraded Andy's abilities to the point where he could copy any personality trait. By copying Thor's nobility, Andy was able to lift Mjolnir. But the transformation sparked a new intelligence within Andy. He turned against his creator, cleared his name by proving he was a victim of the Mad Thinker's influence, and began working at the legal firm as a way of paying off his legal bill. So that's all you really need to do. You just have to prove that you're a victim and everything is okay. And, under certain circumstances, once Magneto also held Mjolnir. This was back in Ultimates 3, number 5, 2008, when Marvel was still great. When Thor first debuted in the Marvel's Ultimate Universe, he appeared to be an ordinary human who had gained his strength and weather-controlling powers from technology. It wasn't until the end of the Ultimates 2 that Thor's divine status was confirmed and the gods of Asgard returned. Following that story, Thor reverted to a more traditional status quo and a more traditional version of Mjolnir. But it wasn't long before Thor's hammer fell into the wrong hands. The Ultimates 3 brought about the deaths of both Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, causing their father Magneto to spiral into grief. Magneto used his control over electromagnetism to steal Mjolnir and wield it himself. Essentially, he manipulated the environment around Mjolnir rather than truly lifting it himself. But the trick got results as Magneto was able to use the hammer to make good on an old threat and reverse Earth's magnetic poles. It should be pointed out that Magneto tried the same electromagnetism trick in the regular Marvel Universe and was unable to affect Mjolnir. Apparently, Uru metal behaves differently depending on where you live. The Red Hulk. This happened in Hulk Volume 2, number 5, back in 2008, when Marvel was still great. Mjolnir's enchantment makes the hammer seem impossibly heavy to any who aren't worthy to hold it. But the problem with basing an enchantment around weight is that you need gravity as part of the equation. If you combine a super strong villain with the lack of gravity in outer space, then suddenly Mjolnir isn't such a challenge. Red Hulk proved this in an early appearance as he cut a path of destruction across the Marvel U. As if stealing Silver Surfer's surfboard and punching the Watcher in the face weren't bad enough, those are very bad things, Red Hulk went toe-to-toe with Thor and beat him with his own hammer. Wow, that's worse than being beaten with your own shoe on the subway. Yeah, that's awful. First, the villain used the hammer's momentum to drag both of them out into space, and then he used the weightless environment to swing away. Thor looked about as surprised as most people reading the comic. It didn't necessarily endear Red Hulk to Thor fans, but the good news is that Thor handily won their rematch a couple of years later. Obviously, I'm partial to this one. Throg. First seen in Lockjaw and the Pet Avengers #1 in 2009. Okay, so the idea of a frog Thor was one of Walt Simonson's huge iconic moments. It involved Thor being turned into a frog by his trickster brother Loki. That was temporary, obviously, but there's a new heir to the title of Frog of Thunder these days. Throg is another human-turned-amphibian, although in this case, the transformation was permanent. His origin story as Simon Walterson, get it? Walt Simonson, established both the tragedy of the character and his kind, noble, brave, froggy heart. Walterson was transformed into a frog named Puddle Gulp during Simonson's run, where he and his new frog compatriots helped Thor battle some evil rats. Puddle Gulp returned many years later in the miniseries Lockjaw and the Pet Avengers. There, readers learned that Thor accidentally left behind a broken sliver of Mjolnir when he departed. Puddle Gulp was able to lift this sliver and transformed into Throg, Frog of Thunder. And Central Park's animal population has a new defender. The unkindly named Bor, father of Odin, lifted the hammer. Back in Thor number 600 in 2009, you could consider Mjolnir to be a family heirloom of sorts. Odin ordered the hammer's forging, and he was able to lift it even when Thor himself was a headstrong, unworthy boy. And it seems the privilege extends to generations past as well. In Thor number 600, Loki, who was a woman at the time, used her magic to resurrect Odin's father, Bor, in the middle of Manhattan. Thanks to confusion and Loki's manipulation, Bor saw the city as a realm full of demons in need of smiting. I agree with him. And when his grandson appeared to intervene, Bor saw him only as the lord of the demons. Thus began a furious battle between Thor, empowered with the might of the Odin force, and a god more powerful than even Odin himself. When Thor launched Mjolnir at Bor, the elder god merely caught the hammer and tossed it away. Thor was eventually able to summon all of his might and bring down his grandfather, but the feat left Mjolnir shattered, and for the crime of striking down a fellow Asgardian, Thor was banished from Midgard, which of course was what Loki really wanted all along. Trickster. And here we go, 2014, Thor #1, relaunched book, the beginning of social justice warrior Marvel, the golden age. Jane Foster becomes Thor. Of course she does. The events of Original Sin laid Thor Odinson low as Nick Fury whispered something in his ear that made him become unworthy and therefore unable to lift Mjolnir. The hammer fell to the moon and refused to budge, not even for Odin himself. But little Jane Foster, she was able to lift it, and the hammer revised its wording to say, quote, if she be worthy. Oh, I see. So we changed the rules, turning her into the new Thor. Now, Marvel ran into a lot of grief over this. Like, why would Jane Foster be called Thor? Thor is the character's name. Well, Marvel just says that the hammer, actually says that anyone who wields the hammer will be imbued with the powers of Thor, which means the title of Thor gets transferred onto you somehow. It was so dumb. But with her new godly power came a price. Turning into Thor is killing her. It was killing Marvel too. Jane Foster has cancer and is undergoing chemotherapy, but the magic power of the hammer cleanses her system of toxic chemicals. So each transformation into Thor takes away the very thing she needs to survive in her human form. Well, I have a solution for that. Jane knows this, but she values using the power of Thor to fight villains who would harm innocents more than her own life. So she continues to wield Mjolnir despite the cost. Wonderful. And finally, as Marvel continued to debase itself, Thor'S 2015. Pretty much every Marvel character held Thor's hammer. So during Secret Wars, Doctor Doom used his new godlike power to create a police force made up entirely of Thors, and they were called the Thor Corps. Numerous characters, both old and new, from the Marvel multiverse were reimagined as Thor's, from Dino Thor to Thrut, the god of lumber. They're not really lifting Thor's original hammer, so maybe this doesn't really count, but it is definitely worth a mention. And since Groot is holding Thor's hammer, at some point you must concede Brie Larson's point. Of course. Yeah, why couldn't Brie Larson's Captain Marvel carry Thor's hammer when everyone else did? And while you're at it, why not let Ashley Judd take a crack at it too? Everyone can hold Thor's hammer. No big deal at all. Hey, want to follow me on Twitter? Okay, cool. I'm at Ethan Van Sciver. Talk to you there. Join the Fandom Menace and execute your own Order 66 with our incredible line of t-shirts, Soylo, a Soy Wars story, Tico, a Soy Wars story, and our brand new smoking hot Soy Wars Plan 9. Make a statement today. This is the only trilogy you'll ever need. The link is below in the description. If you enjoyed this video and want to become part of this community, subscribe to this channel by clicking the Laughing Man face logo right on your screen. Ring the bell for notifications as well. You'll never miss a live chat. And stay tuned, another video by Comic Artist Pro Secrets is coming right up.